Tracking your calories and macros is a tedious task that a lot of people don't want to do. However, your nutrition plays a huge role in getting you to your fitness goals. Today, we have health and fitness professional Eddy on to discuss this topic. So what's the value of tracking your macros and calories on your fitness journey?
So it's a good question. And I think when a lot of people hear about tracking, they kind of get scared. Maybe they have a negative connotation toward it. What I tell people is, look, if you want really great results, then there's going to be a certain level of effort. And part of that is knowing your numbers. And so tracking is just another form or a way to know your numbers. And so I think fat loss is sometimes, or whether it's fat loss, whether it's gaining muscle, right? You have to kind of know your numbers, because if you want to build muscle, you want to be in a little bit of a surplus. If you want to lose fat, you want to be in a little bit of a deficit. And so if you feel like fat loss or gaining muscle is this mystery, it's because you don't know your numbers. And so by knowing your numbers, you take the mystery out of it and you kind of know. Now, a lot of people may say, well, it's not exact. We don't really know how much is in food, or sometimes it's hard to track. It's going to be hard to track, but at least if you're putting some effort to kind of know where you're at, you're going to be better off than not doing it at all, right?
Right? Because it's very surprising to a lot of people when they see, whoa, I'm that far away from 1 gram per pound of body weight. If they weigh 150, let's say, and that's what they're trying to hit, 150 grams, and they're like, wow, I'm only getting like 70 grams of protein. I did not realize how far away I was. So the value of tracking, that answers that pretty quickly.
Yeah. And what I tell people is, look, you don't have to do it forever. Do it for a week or two. Refresh yourself on what it looks like to have a serving of rice, a serving of, what does 20 grams of protein look like, whether you're having chicken or fish or steak, what does that look like? And once you do it for a week or two, then maybe you kind of step away from it. Right now, what I've found with myself is tracking provides freedom for me. The reason why I say that is because I know that I've got an app that I'm comfortable with using already. It wasn't easy at first. I had to kind of get used to it, but just like anything, you get better at it. And then now what it does is it provides me this level of freedom that I love, because if I know I have an Italian dinner that I'm going out with my wife, and I might have, a big pasta dinner and a glass of wine, well, guess what? I'm going to make sure that I account for that early on in the day, and I'm going to plan ahead. And tracking gives me the numbers. So I say, all right, I'm going to have a lighter breakfast, or maybe I'm going to do some intermittent fasting and I'll have a lunch and then a bigger dinner. I don't have to feel guilty when I have a little bit of gelato for dessert, because I already accounted for it and I tracked for it. Versus if I'm not tracking and I'm going in blind, then there's a lot more room for that guilt to come in. And then all of a sudden you say, I ate this and I ate that, and I don't know if I went over, so now I feel a little guilty. So now the next day I feel like I have to spend an hour on the treadmill. And then all of a sudden people start to couple fitness and exercise with this punishment for eating too much, when really you can just kind of get ahead of all of that by just knowing your numbers.
Yeah, it's building that good relationship with food. If you're eating a lot and then you just want to burn it off by running on the treadmill, that's just a terrible relationship with food and exercise. It's probably you don't probably even like going on the treadmill and eating all those calories. Obviously, that's a terrible habit to be in.
Yeah. I tell people, look, there's always a trade-off, and being healthy requires a trade-off. And that trade-off is, I'm going to be more diligent with what I eat. I'm going to be more diligent with my workouts, And on the other side, what do I get? I'm healthier. I'm able to build more muscle, or I'm able to lose more fat. But it's trade-off. And you get to choose how you want that trade-off to work. And so in my mind, my trade-off is great, because I track, but I can also eat what I want. And if I want to have a little dessert at night before bed, I can have that because I tracked and I accounted for it. So that's my trade-off. You see, I get the discomfort of having to log it in an app, but at the same time, I get the comfort of being able to eat whatever is going to make me happy later on that night, or whenever I want to eat something. So I think for me, it's a fair trade-off. Everyone's going to be different. So I tell people, just kind of evaluate and figure out what's your balance that you're comfortable with. And maybe you use hand gestures. Maybe you say, all right, my chicken breast is the palm size. That's 1 serving. I'm going to have 5 of those every day. Great. That's one way to track. It doesn't always have to be on an app. It doesn't always have to be journaling. It could be a number of different ways that you can track. But at the end of the day, if you put more awareness on something, whatever you're putting awareness on, that's going to improve. And the reason why we're here is to help people improve. And so tracking is just one way to eliminate the mystery and just help people improve.
Yeah, I'm sure you get this a lot. It's, Eddie, I've been eating very healthy. I've been having salads. I've not been going to fast food as much. But let's say they're not logging, for example, in this instance. Maybe they just forgot the snacks they had for like after lunch, or they had like a pretty unhealthy breakfast. They just didn't remember because they didn't account for that because they didn't track it. They didn't realize, let's say, how much calories were in pancakes or on the butter they put on top. And then that just adds up. And then if in this instance, if we're trying to lose weight, that's just a disaster. It's never going to happen.
Yeah, and one of the most common things that I'm sure you come across too is people who will track Monday through Friday, but then on the weekends they give themselves a break and they don't track. And let's say you've got a 200 or 300 calorie deficit every single day, but then on a Saturday you go out with your buddies and you have pizza and wings and beer. Guess what? You just undid all of the progress that you had done for the whole week. And so if you didn't track and you weren't aware of that, again, it's not some mystery. You just weren't aware of it. You didn't put the awareness on it. And so it slipped through the cracks. And that's what happens. And so I just think that if you know your numbers, you're going to give yourself more freedom, because then there's no question of whether you can have something or not. It's a question of whether it fits into your plan or not. And you have your plan, you're following your plan, and you get to choose what goes into that plan. You have ownership of that. So it's an incredible amount of freedom to be able to say, yeah, I do want to have dessert today. Or, today I'm not hungry for breakfast. Well, guess what? That means I get to have a bigger lunch or a bigger dinner. Like, I get to have so much flexibility because I'm just aware of what's coming in, you know?
And I really think that when you first start out with someone, a new client, let's say, they need to initially track their macros, at least their calories and protein. And let's say they're trying to lose weight in that calorie deficit, just so they can see, like, wow, this is what 2,000 calories is. This is what I have to be in consistently to start dropping some weight. And it's not about exactly what you're eating, it's how much you're eating. So, really figuring out foods that you like. And it's like a puzzle piece. You're trying to put breakfast, lunch, dinner. You could have a dessert. Like, you don't have to get rid of dessert. It's about how much you're having.
I can tell you what'll happen, which is one of the most common things, is once you start tracking, you start to realize how much energy and calorie is in certain foods. And then what happens after that is you start to realize, damn, maybe that's not worth eating anymore. Like, maybe I'm going to go with this other option, right? So my wife, for example, used to love having salads, and then she realized how many calories are in a tablespoon of olive oil. Olive oil is healthy, but easy to overeat, right? Easy to pour a little bit of extra dressing on that salad. And so all of a sudden she realized, well, another thing was rice and potatoes. She's like, oh, I can get more potatoes and be more satisfied with my meal if I have potatoes versus if I have a little bit of rice. So now we do more potatoes. Perfect example of just tracking is going to give you kind of an awareness and almost this opportunity to kind of swap things in and out and really figure out what works for you and what works for your goals. So to your point, like, you got to do it at least for a little bit, figure out what works for you, and then maybe you can step away from it. What I've noticed is if I step away from tracking for a week or two, I start to make some mistakes here and there. And I'm a nutrition coach and an expert, and I help people go through this process. If I forget and I make mistakes, then I can guarantee you that the people who aren't doing this on a day-to-day basis are making mistakes, because we are in it and our mind is, we're only thinking about strength training and working out and food, and we're thinking about this day in and day out, and we work with clients all day and we make mistakes. Imagine the people that just have regular jobs. Of course they're going to make mistakes. It's normal. It doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you. You just have to be aware of it and figure out what works for you.
Yeah, a lot of people don't understand how many calories are in salad dressings, the olive oil, balsamic vinaigrette. Let's say they go to Chick-fil-A every day, but they're getting a salad and they're like, oh, that's my healthy meal. But they had a lot of dressing on it. And then they have an unhealthy dinner and unhealthy breakfast. That's not going to work. And a couple other items that a lot of people will think like, yeah, this is pretty healthy. Peanut butter, eggs, avocados. Yes, like good fats. But again, it's how much you eat of it. There's a lot of fat, a lot of calories. If you're trying to be in a calorie deficit, those aren't the best items to be eating.
Absolutely. I just started reintroducing almond butter back into my diet, and I have to be very careful when I get a tablespoon measuring thing, and I make sure that it's not like this heaping tablespoon, that it's just a tablespoon. It's not like a heaping pound, because you can easily say, I'm going to grab a tablespoon of peanut butter or almond butter or whatever, and it's like this heaping thing that's almost like twice the amount that it should be. Look, you can easily double the amount of calories with some of these fats just without even noticing. You can easily double the amount of calories you have. And that's why when they do studies, and they've done research studies on this, they show that people are typically off by about 50%. That means if you're trying to hit 2000 calories, you're probably 50% off. You're almost at 3000 calories probably, or more. Like, you're not going to hit your goals that way. So you have to just put some awareness around it and just accept the fact that it's not going to be perfect, but it's going to be better. And that's what's going to help you get to your goals.
Right. And let's kind of go back to that example of where, let's say we are in that calorie deficit for 5 days, and then on the weekend, let's say we like doing football, like watching football with the buddies on Sunday, and then on Saturday we like to go to the beach and drink some beers and stuff. How exactly do we kind of still work out the social aspect of our life into our weight loss journey?
The best way to do it is to just plan ahead. And so there's a couple of different ways to do this. I have clients where we have like a red, green, and yellow day, or a high, medium, low day. If you know you're going to have a high calorie day on a Saturday because you know you're going to go to the beach, or you know you're going to be drinking, right? Then let's make that a high day. It's going to be high calorie anyway. Don't fight it. Accept the fact that it's going to be high. Make up for it, because what ends up happening is, at the end of the day, we're focused on the average amount of calories for that 7-day period for that week, right? And that's what's going to help you get to your goal. So it's okay to have a high calorie day on a Saturday or Sunday. If you know on the weekend you're going to go off the rails, then first of all, I wouldn't recommend you go off the rails. But if you're going to have higher calorie days, just account for it, and then make sure that you make up for that deficit on the other days throughout the week, when you know you have a little more structure, you have more of a structured schedule, and you can plan out your meals. If you know you're going to be traveling on a weekend, right? Then make sure that you plan ahead and you say, all right, I'm not going to be in control of what I eat on Saturday and Sunday, because I'm going to be traveling and I might have to eat out at restaurants, and I don't know what they're going to put into that food. So I'm going to buffer it, and I'm going to have a little more of a calorie deficit when I can control things while I'm home throughout the week. So planning ahead, making low, medium, and high calorie days. Everything is going to, there's a lot of different options on how to do it. Look, some people just want to fast. They want to say, you know what, I'm going to have a heavy dinner, so I'm going to do some intermittent fasting. There's nothing wrong with that. If you don't happen to get early, hungry in the morning, that's okay. I do that sometimes if I'm gonna have, I love Italian food. So if I'm gonna have bread and olive oil and a pasta and some dessert, then I account for that by, intermittent fasting, maybe skipping breakfast, maybe having lighter carbs for lunch. You just gotta plan, and you move around, and all of a sudden you have all this flexibility, because like you said, it's like a puzzle piece. You got a puzzle for the day, you got a caloric budget, and you get to move it around and kind of make it however you want. And there's a lot of empowerment, and there should be a lot of freedom and excitement around that. It shouldn't feel like a restricting thing. It should feel like a tool that allows you to do whatever you want with it. And that's what I try to position it as. I try to position it as this nice tool where you get to play around with it and make it what you want. And that, if you do that right, then you have more satisfaction with your whatever, whether you're deficit or your surplus, whatever you're doing. And if you have more satisfaction with it, then you're going to stick to it more consistently, and you're going to get to your goals. Because you and I know that you can do a deficit for a day. That's not going to make a difference, right? Consistency is the most important thing. And so what you're trying to do is make sure that you give people tools so that they can adhere to it for a longer, consistent period of time, because that's what's going to get them to their goal.
Yeah, a good rule of thumb is the 80-20 rule, 80% good, nutritious, whole food, then 20% more processed food. Just because we don't want to be eating, I mean, so technically you can eat just like very unhealthy food and calorie deficit and still lose some weight. It's just not the healthiest way to go about it. So the 80-20 rule is something that's recommended, and I definitely recommend that to my clients and everyone to do that, just because, like you said, it's about balance. It's not about having the healthiest, most nutritious food every single meal, which is probably not budget friendly, and it's not going to be something you can be consistent with.
Yeah, look, most of us don't have the luxury of having a cook that's going to cook for us 3 meals a day, organic, grass-fed, wild caught fish. Like that's just not the reality of life. And so your 80-20 rule is spot on. Like it's such a great way to just kind of take a little bit of the restriction away and just it's life, man. Like we're here trying to help people live their lives and live a healthier life. Now, what I have noticed is that we live in a time and a place where being healthy is not the normal thing anymore. It's not the norm. The norm is being overweight, being obese. And when people look at you and they see you having a baked potato with some broccoli and a chicken breast or a lean piece of steak, you're the anomaly. You're the odd man out. And it's unfortunate, but that's the world we live in. And so I tell my clients, I say, if you want to be healthy, you have to be ready to psychologically accept the fact that you're not, when you go to a restaurant and you look around, you're not going to be the normal person there. You're going to be the outlier that's actually eating healthy because most people are eating unhealthy. And it's a sad state, and hopefully it's getting better and better. But just where we are right now. And so you have to be okay with being healthy, and meaning you're not gonna be the normal person. You look around, everyone else is overweight and unhealthy.
And we talk about nutrition, and we combine exercise and nutrition because you can't just exercise and then expect you just to lose some weight. You could be training 4 times a week, but if your diet is, let's say, in the calorie surplus and you're trying to lose weight, you're just not going to lose weight. You may gain some muscle if you have enough protein, but it really comes down to, if you want to lose weight, initially track your calories, track your macros, ensure that you are in that calorie deficit, and then maybe a little bit longer down the line, once you're consistent, you could stop tracking because you legitimately know that you're eating in a calorie deficit.
Yeah, I think of it as education. Like we're gonna go through this 1 or 2 week period of education where we're gonna relearn, right? Most of us didn't never learn in the beginning. You know, when I was overweight and I was almost 300 pounds, I didn't know what a portion size was, right? I also didn't know the fact that when I was eating ultra processed foods, it was just making me hungrier and hungrier, so I couldn't stop eating. Right. So now I understand these things. And to your point earlier, you can have an ultra processed diet and be in a calorie deficit and lose weight, but you're going to feel like crap. So I tell people the macros determine and the calories determine whether you lose weight or gain weight, or, but the micronutrients and the quality of the food, that's going to determine how you feel while you're losing or gaining weight or whatever. So you want to feel as satiated and as satisfied and as healthy as possible. Then you got to do both. You got to know what the calories are, but you also have to kind of make that 80-20 rule real and pick some good choices. Stick to processed or minimally processed foods. Look, at the end of the day, we're not going to be able to all eat some kind of whole foods diet that's all completely unprocessed because it's not realistic. But not realistic doesn't mean that you can't make better choices. I think people they just need to make better choices here and there. 80-20, fill that other 20% with what makes you happy and what you're not willing to give up, and that's okay.
Tracking your calories, your macros, highly valuable when you're trying to either bulk up, trying to lose some weight, trying to lose weight in the calorie deficit. It's just, there's so much value to it. Highly recommend that you start tracking. If you're just kind of stuck, you haven't lost weight in a little bit, maybe you started off with having smaller portion sizes. You did initially start losing weight, but now you've just been plateaued for a while. It's tracking your stuff. That'll guarantee it.
Absolutely. The whole plateau thing, it's usually fixed by just refocusing on your calories and realizing that you maybe had let some things slip in and out. So absolutely second that. Just give yourself some freedom, look at the numbers and provide some freedom for yourself and just have some awareness around it. And it doesn't have to be perfect. Just start somewhere, and little by little, you'll get better at it.
All right, guys, thanks for watching today's video. If you liked it, check out this video about how alcohol can affect your fitness journey. We'll see you guys on the next one.